These practices are all meant to give us the power of choice, to remind us that we have a choice, that our story matters, that our voice matters, and that it really is just a little pivot here and there. These rituals help to adjust ourselves to who we are.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Andi Keh, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Podcast. I'm Andi Keh.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are coming to you today to talk about intuition.
Yes.
With our dear, dear friend, Aarona.
We love you, Aarona. So happy you're finally on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about it for so much. It is in the chaos of our life that Aarona had to sink in quickly, and she's so good at sinking in.
She's so adaptable and just gets it.
But you had Noah on your hip.
Yeah, it was a rough time. We were in the middle of the hardest parts of our last au pair, where it's like it was just really, really hard. There was a lot of difficulty. It wasn't a good fit. A lot of you have asked, like, what happened? Doesn't really matter. The point is that it just wasn't a good fit for our family, and we could feel that every single day, and it was wearing on all of us, including her. And now we have a beautiful fit, and we're at such peace. And I was actually just talking to your sister about this morning, Andi, and she was like, "Isn't it crazy when you have a gut feeling about something, and then you follow it and you listen and you were right."
Huh, look at how that fits into our theme for today.
And your sister was saying, all the way in Israel, she said she had the same thing happen with a nanny, where her first nanny with Omri, their first, wasn't a great fit. And she just kept being like, maybe this is the way it is with a nanny. Maybe it's just not. Maybe this is just the way it feels. The minute she had the right fit, she was like, this is how it's supposed to feel. And
which is the way we feel right now,
which is the way we felt. But it's a little extra complicated when someone's living in your home in this au pair situation. I felt so codependent, wanting to people please and not ruin her life. And like, oh no, what will happen to her? But the bottom line was, as a mom, as a dad, we had to protect our family and our home. And that is the priority, is our family and our home.
I agree.
And listening to that. But yeah, poor Aarona. So hopefully you guys can hear most of what's happening here and can follow the train of thought in this interview. We did the best we could. Baby Noah's in and out. She was very baby at that time and
very vocal.
Very vocal. I had to walk in and out a lot, but luckily we're all such good friends that we could kind of carry through the conversation. It was like being at our house. Totally.
If you want the feeling of what it's like to actually be here, well, I mean, it's a little different as it keeps evolving
day to day.
I want to share with you the review of the week, coming to you from Yogi Gina. And it says, "Such a great podcast, ! Thanks for such a wonderful podcast. It is energizing and makes me sit up and think deeply about my life, my truth, and my purpose." Thank you, Gina. And we love you listening. We love you guys leaving these reviews. As Sophie's mentioned before, we read all of them.
Yep.
And so if you leave us one of your little 5-star ratings and reviews, we will hopefully read yours right here one day. Yeah. And then Sophie, you had a quote you wanted to share with everybody.
Yeah. So the first word that came up for me when I was thinking about this recording with Aarona is intuition. And then I opened up her Instagram this morning, and the first post that she had written was intuition. So I've listened to that. I followed that. And now from the Moon Deck, which is Aarona's co-collaboration with one of her best friends who illustrated it.
Yep.
Aarona is the author of the Moon Deck. I'm picking and reading the intuition card. So it says, intuition, my inner compass knows the way. Our inner compass is our intuition. When we pause to listen, we expand into its wisdom. As we strengthen our relationship to this gentle yet directive voice inside, it becomes brighter and clearer. The presence of your intuition is centered, honest, loving, calm, supportive, and guided. Life feels more synchronized and happy when you awaken your inner guide. Its opposite is fear, which feels stuck, confused, anxious, overly controlling, disconnected, or heavy. We may be carrying fear from our childhood or even lifetimes ago. Yet in any moment, we can choose to ask for guidance. Experiment with this deeper listening and validate what you see, feel, hear, even if it doesn't appear logical at first. Engage with your inner compass daily and let it ripple into every aspect of your life. Such a beautiful explanation for intuition. Like, I couldn't have said that better.
Yeah, I mean, I think intuition is one of those things that sounds so easy, right? Oh, I should just listen to my inner voice. But yet, it becomes really difficult to listen to your inner voice when you've been told to or have just learned over time not to trust it.
Yeah, and it's easy to become cloudy. It's easy for your intuition to become cloudy. Every day, things are happening that kind of throw you off course. You get bombarded with information from other people through social media, through the news, through walking through your life, people's energies. It's hard. You start to lose track of who you really are. And so you have to have practices, rituals, things that you do daily to bring you back to your truth and who you really are. Like last night I got home from that massage and I was like, cool, I'm back to myself now. Like I was thrown off. Like this past weekend, we had a very traumatic incident with Noah and I had to spend the week, like most of the weekend in the hospital. It was really low vibration and toxic and I felt off. Like, yes, I followed my intuition in going there, but I felt clouded and confused by all the different information I was receiving there. And
well, especially for somebody in your world, here we are in a traditional Western hospital. Our daughter's finger looks like it came from an alien movie.
Yeah.
And what do? And to go to a traditional care by itself, probably in your head is already weird. And then they go, okay, well, we got to give her heavy dose antibiotics.
It feels unsafe. That's what it feels like. It feels unsafe walking into those environments.
And where does that come from?
From not being familiar. I grew up in a opposite. I never went to the doctor. I didn't go to the hospital till we birthed our first child. I didn't walk into I was given homeopathic medicines until I was in middle school. My mom came home and gave us immunizations in our kitchen, chased us around the house.
So funny, right? I grew up with a dad who was a physician, so I went to hospitals before I ever needed care from a hospital.
Exactly.
So there was
no...
It felt easy in there. I mean, that totally changed when my dad had to go to the hospital with cancer and that shifted the way I feel viscerally about hospitals because just the pain associated with it. But for the longest time in my life, it wasn't even an issue. So
I think it's a familiarity thing. So when I first walk into the hospital, and it also feels kind of like dirty
it's
cold, dirty. It feels very disconnected. I mean, I've always felt this way. Even my OB, who I had all 3 kids with her, even that experience, it's very transactional. You come in, you do your 6 minutes, and you leave. And you wait for an hour to get it's different. With a midwife, you sit for an hour and you discuss your feelings and what's coming up emotionally, and they check in mind, body, soul. With your OB, they're like, any bleeding? Right. How's it going?
I want to bring it back to intuition though. Yeah. So something is going on and it's jarring to you. And in this situation, you had to listen to your intuition about going towards something that isn't familiar.
I knew that something was wrong, and I knew that I was not equipped to handle that at home, and that I needed a second opinion from experts. And so Children's Hospital felt like the wisest choice, just to make sure that our daughter wasn't dying.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is it's easy sometimes, I think it's easy sometimes to mistake the things we're used to doing to the intuitive notion of what we should be doing. Because, well, this is how we normally do things. Just becomes the de facto standard. Like, well, when somebody gets hurt, we do this thing. Or when I feel depressed, I do these set of things to make myself feel okay.
Yeah. Even though I felt uncomfortable because it wasn't familiar, I still felt right pushing through that because intuitively I knew that was the right place to be.
Yeah, so we're talking about a deeper sense of intuition.
Yeah. Like I knew, although it was a low vibration energy to expose my body and heart to all weekend, and it was hard to watch my daughter be in pain, intuitively it was the right place to have them watch over her in such an extreme case.
Yeah, and I think, again, I mean, Ignite is about this podcast is about relationships. And so the reason I want to get to this, and we'll get to it even more at the end, is, Aarona and the moon deck. And I mean, if you know Aarona or you tune into her stuff, and obviously we'll have her handle on here and all these other ways you can connect with her. But she's about deep level intuition and trying to go as deeply as you can into what is right, not right for everybody else, right for you in the way you live. And so the reason I think that this is an important point to make is following your intuition will not always be easy, right? I think people make this mistake all the time. Well, if I followed my intuition, then this will feel comfortable and easy. I don't think that's necessarily true.
No.
I mean, you went through a pretty rough, I was there for 8 hours of the 24 hours that you were at the hospital or whatever. And those 8 hours gave me PTSD.
Yeah.
That was not an easy time for you.
Right. And so that's where, coming back to the beginning of the story, I got a massage last night, which I knew intuitively I needed since the minute I left the hospital, because I felt like I was hit by a truck, mostly just because of the emotional.
Well, the stress, the response.
Yeah. I was telling you, my sweat smelled different on Sunday. Like I went through, my hormonal levels went through such trauma, and my body went through such trauma. So then I knew on Sunday I needed to just stay home because I was sleep deprived and a mess and kind of crazy. So I needed to just stay home and rest. But then I knew I needed a massage, and then I got one last night. And as soon as I got home, I was like, oh, I feel back to myself. I feel grounded and in my body and not so separated from it, because I felt like I was so whipped around this weekend.
Oh, emotionally you were.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's nice to tune in and know what you need. And sometimes we don't know what we need to get back on track. But that's the point of this, is the idea about intuition is to find different practices that work for you to bring you back on course, to find your inner compass and follow that.
Yeah. I mean, that's, meditation, mindfulness, the whole point of that
yoga
is really to give you a space to explore what it feels like versus the distractions we get from the outside constantly about you should be paying attention to, what you should be thinking about.
Right.
You're supposed to get tuned in, at least to have a more trained ear. Right. Like a musician trains their ear to hear notes and parts of songs so that they can easily recreate them or perform. This is about paying attention to your intuition about the way you should function, because this is your life and you're supposed to be able to find the way to go about it that fits your way of being. Right.
And I think that's why our self-care question that we ask at the end of every single episode, we ask 5 questions. And I think if you go back and listen to even the last 10 minutes of every episode we've ever recorded, that's why we're offering that. Everyone has a different route. Everyone has a different path to figure out how to be the best versions of who they are. It can be a massage. It can be ice cream. It can be a bath. It can be a walk in nature. We've had people say meditation. We've had people say beauty regimen. Like, there are so many ways to drop in and get back on your path to find your true north, to get that inner compass aligned. We all fall off. The best of the best. We interview the best of the best practitioners in healing, in psychology, doctors. We interview them all, and they all fall off track and then have practices that bring them back on the daily.
Absolutely. And I want to bring this back to relationships to some extent, because you guys ask us a lot, so we have the relationship tip of the week, and you guys ask us a lot in DMs and in emails. How do you know? How do you know if you're supposed to do the work and hunker down and make this relationship stick, or if you're supposed to walk away from this thing?
Yep.
Should I stay or should I leave is one of those questions you guys come up with a lot. And I think it speaks to the concept of intuition so well, because we get so thrown off track by the noise and the discomfort of our current situation, and then everybody's input, what your parents think you should do, what your friend thinks, and then what your best friend thinks, which is different than what your other 3 acquaintances think that you've talked about, what people on Instagram have told you, etc. Sophie's going to share with you a practice actually from Aarona's moon deck of how to start training yourself literally to pay attention to what your inner compass is telling you.
And I love this because a lot of times we don't have the luxury. Like the way that I've always found my intuition truly is through travel. Traveling alone is the best way to get quiet, push away all your normal habits, all your normal distractions, and find your voice again when you get lost. So travel has always been, I'd like feel off balance, book a trip, go away alone, go do something, have an adventure. So this is a great practice or ritual that you can take a half day for, a full day. And I just love this. So
and by the way, just because you said that, and I want to tell people that's something we do. Again, in following our intuition, not always the easiest thing, right? Probably twice a year, I go away to something when you're not with me.
Right.
Probably about twice a year, you go away somewhere for a weekend away or a long weekend or something like that. A lot of people look at it and go, how dare you? How can you do that? And
we have to.
How can you leave the family? And we know that recharges us.
It fills up our buckets.
So that we can come back and be better people. I just wanted to say that because for a lot of people, that by itself is a big point.
Oh, yeah. Being alone is key, especially in relationship. So this ritual is all about getting to know the sound and feeling of your loving, directive, intuitive voice. So find a time when you can devote at least 1 hour and up to a full day traveling wherever the wind blows you. So the first thing you want to do in this ritual to follow your own inner compass is to begin with a journal entry. And the questions, the prompts are, how does your intuition speak to you? What do you feel? And how does this voice sound? What specific sensations arise? We can also enter this into the show notes so you have the journal entry. But the idea here is just to connect to, what does my intuition speak like? What does it sound like? What does it feel? What does it make me feel? How does the voice sound? And then what are the sensations that arise? Then, with a clear connection to the presence of your intuition, gear up for your journey with no particular goal or plan. Walk, bike, drive, or whatever you see fit. I love being on my bike. That's so fun. I used to love doing that.
And just ride around.
Little adventures. Like when we lived in the Valley, I would be like, okay, I'm going to go get a Thai massage. I'm going to go on my bike. I'm going to figure out how to get there. I'm going to leave my phone at home. And that's really that's when I would have those adventures. You can have them anywhere at any time. And then intuit where your body wants to go. Turn left, turn right, or pause when your inner compass tells you to. Let go of needing to know what comes next while maintaining an anchored connection to your gut and intuition throughout. Enjoy the ride and learn along the way. Once you're done, revisit your journal and write about how this experience has awakened your inner compass. So that experience, I can feel the presence of my intuition while I just read this. I can feel how good it feels to be free on my bike, on foot, going for a jog, getting lost, leaving my phone at home or on airplane mode just so that you have it for emergencies. Journaling. These are the practices that bring you back to your truth.
Well, I think this works on multiple levels too. It works in the literal sense, the one you just kind of described. Yeah. Literally getting on your bike, literally walking, all that stuff. And just paying attention. Oh, that street feels like the right place to go. That coffee shop feels like the right place to walk into, etc. And then doing the same thing psychologically and emotionally in your life is another version of that, right? And so I always love physical examples of spiritual and psychological things because it's so much easier to tune in physically. That the left doesn't look as enticing as the right makes sense to us and we can see it, right? Like you guys know, even listening right now, going north on one street feels better to you than going south. It leads towards things you want more, etc. So that makes sense. So practice it there. And then think to yourself, how cool would it be if I could do the same in life? Because life is really, I talk about this a lot of times with clients. When you're in everyday life, it's like there's a map, but you don't get to see the map. We don't have a bird's eye view of what the streets lead into. So we have to pay attention to our intuition.
Yep.
Because going left right now feels like the right thing to do. But guess what? I don't know what's on the left side of the street. I just don't. And if you get to tune into that, then you start paying attention to and trusting your intuition. Then you can always reverse course. You can always say, oh, the left actually didn't pan out to where I wanted to go.
And that's actually when you can really test your intuition. That's the best part, is by making mistakes. And that's what people hold on and grasp onto so tightly is wanting to be perfect and not make mistakes. But that's where you learn. I mean, that's my biggest lessons have been when I fell.
Yeah.
Hard.
Totally. And to bring it back to the relationship tip of the week.
How do you know?
If you trust your intuition,
yeah,
then sometimes you will leave something. You and your ex-partner now will learn something in the leaving that will bring you back together. Stop believing that you can map this out for yourself and control the relationship. I think that's, to me, the important part, right?
Well, and I really wanted to just touch on, because we talk so much about keeping relationships intact and doing the work. And if you both can show up and both parties are willing to do the work, and the question comes again and again, okay, my partner did X. He cheated. She cheated. She betrayed me. He betrayed me. Whatever it might be. How do I know when to stay and when to go? My number one thing I always say is, are both parties willing to work? To show up and do the work as individuals and in the partnership? Is he willing to go to therapy on his own and show up and do the work with you and go to groups, go to whatever it might be?
I do love the Derek. Derek is making me think of the word work a little differently.
A lot of people get hung up on the word work.
So if that makes you feel weird,
sure,
he would say something like, is the other person willing to bring in the love with you? Is the other person willing to embrace the love and be about love
and
with
be present? Be present.
Yeah.
Because you're not being present if you're not willing to fill in the blank, do the work, show up and be loving. Because it's not loving the way that you need to be loved. Are they willing to love you in the way that you want them to love you?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's all of those things. It's presence, it's love. It happens to be work also.
Yeah.
Because love takes work and it's not easy, and that's real love. And bless if you're in one of those honeymoon stages forever, but I don't know many people that it lasts forever for. That's the point. For every up, there's a down, and eventually it has to even out. And there's lots of ebbs and flows along the way. But as long as you have a partner who's willing to show up and hold your hand through it, then you're on the right path. And I think that's really cool to listen to Aarona's journey. Aarona is a very bright, beautiful soul and spirit. She went through a hard divorce, and she had a death. Her mother passed away that same year. She moved across the country. There's a lot of really intense things that happened to her, but she walked away from certain things in her life that didn't serve the highest good of who she wanted to show up and be.
Yeah. So remember, train your intuition radar.
So that you know.
Train yourself to listen to what's going on inside, and then learn to trust it better and better. And the map will reveal itself to you.
If you want to go back and listen to our Breaking Up with Friends episode, that's really, really helpful in terms of friend breakups. Though they are as important to the makeup of who you are and that energy that you let in, whether it be relationships in work, relationships with friends, relationships with lovers, they all affect your well-being and who you are and the makeup of who you become. So edit it, constantly edit those people in your life so that you can show up more fully and more presently.
Absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in. Check us out on the other side of this with Aarona.
So excited. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the conversation piece here today. We've got a packed house. We have Noah. Say hi, Noah.
You'll hear her.
Yeah, you'll definitely hear her throughout. And then we've got Aarona Lea, our friend, our dear, dear friend. I can't believe we've never done an episode with you yet.
I know.
How does that
Tonight's the
happen?
night. Tonight's the night.
It is Shabbat for our non-Jewish friends who are driving around the middle of the country and have no idea what that means. This is Saturday is the Jewish Sunday. It's a day of worship and a day of rest.
Yeah.
Technically, Shabbat, the word literally means rested. So it was the day that God rested when he made the universe, which he made in a week, which is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing he built all this in a week.
We got to get to it.
He's our next guest.
I know, it really makes me feel lazy. I felt like I got a lot done this week, but I did not build a universe, Noah.
Not in 7 days, you didn't.
For sure. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
I love being here.
Yeah.
Arona's like a sister to me. We met on a retreat in Yalapa.
You totally did meet on the retreat, didn't you?
We
led it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We met before that.
We did.
We did. That would have been really cool. We met in Mexico. But we luckily met before the retreat happened so we could start to plan and plot. We got flown to the Free People headquarters and we just instantly connected. And Naomi, who put the whole thing together, knew that we would instantly. Shout out to Naomi. Thank you so much for such a magical experience and for trusting us. We had 27 people on our retreat.
Yeah.
That was like a fully produced retreat.
It was
That
amazing.
thing
It was a
was.
dream.
It was a dream.
And we dreamt that up.
Yeah.
We literally put pen to paper and we're like, what would make this the most massively amazing, creative, dream-like
That
experience?
was such a fun afternoon, just being in that room at Free People.
It was really
at the
cool.
headquarters. That was really cool. And that group got the first moon decks, which are now vintage decks because we've had some changes since then, but they got the
Still got
first
them.
samples. OG vintage decks. I don't even think the cards had numbers on them
Nope,
yet.
they didn't.
Yeah. They're like, I'll figure out how to find it in the book.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. So Aarona and I met co-leading a yoga retreat for Free People's first retreat experiences in Mexico in Yalapa, which we actually arrived at the resort at the little tree house by boat because there was no way to enter unless you came in by boat. So,
Right.
I mean, just the whole thing was so magical. Yeah. Noah?
No, I wasn't there, but she knows that it was magical.
But we
Yeah.
did talk about Noah.
We did. Yeah,
About you
right
calling,
then.
you were calling her in on that retreat very vividly.
You've been called in for so long. I've known for so long that you were meant to be in our family.
He's like, give me that mic.
Yeah. But Aarona has, she co-founded and created the Moon Deck, which you've seen me talk about, write about, take pictures of extensively over the last 3 years. And it's my number one deck when I go to a deck to use one in terms of connecting to my spirit, to my intention for the day, to during a full moon, a new moon. This is the deck that I use to connect in.
Can we have the master herself explain how this deck came to be and the story behind it? And because you still sell these things.
Yeah, we're a full-fledged business, small business and growing. And
isn't like technically the definition of a small business is anything under like 100 employees or something? So we're all going to be a small business for a minute.
Then we're definitely a small business, but we're growing. We do have a team, and every year our numbers are better, and yeah, we'll see what happens. So
tell the story of the Moon Deck.
So I'm kind of like half spiritual, magical creator
Fairy.
lady and entrepreneur, and kind of geek out in that area too. And I've been a yoga teacher for almost 15 years now, and in the practice for 23 years, yoga, movement, meditation. And that's definitely in some ways at the foundation of the Moon Deck, along with trauma that I grew up with and things that I healed through. And we can get into that a little later. But I think all of that, I, at a young age, had a really natural inclination towards the spiritual realm, wanting to understand spirit, wanting to understand God, wanting to understand things that I felt and saw. And I think that was just a natural thing for me that I was born with, but I also think it was a way for me to create a sense of connection and protection around me, having grown up in some uncertain circumstances. And that all led, I think, in a lot of ways to me discovering all the practices that I got into just for the joy of it. But I say, everything that for me started from survival became my passion, became my profession.
That's so great. It's such a beautiful thing when the trials you've had in life lead to lessons, first of all, which they do for a lot of us, but then to take those lessons and make tools for other people to have lessons so that they can make their life better is really amazing.
Totally. Yeah. And I think I had used decks a lot myself, whether it was tarot decks or Osho or affirmation decks, all kinds of decks. And they helped me. Just being a visual person, experiential is just a way to kind of get a big idea on a card and I could digest it, and it helped connect me to my intuition. It helped entertain me in the moment probably. And it also
keep you busy.
Keep me busy. But it really just helped me connect to my guidance in my life. And then as a yoga teacher, I started painting words on paper or handing out cards to students and saw that it was having an impact on them as well. So the moon deck came about from my own use of cards, using them with my students, seeing the impact on them. And then I didn't know it would be so feminine or work with the cycles of the moon.
Yeah.
Until I was sitting with a moon circle for a few years. And that's kind of when that came to be.
It's the most stunning deck. I mean, the pictures are insane. I'll include my code at the bottom. I think it's Sophie Moon, but we'll look at that and make sure and keep it in the show notes. But I have a code for you guys to use, and they are the most beautiful. I use them for every moon circle that I lead, that I attend. If I can't make it to a moon circle or I'm not hosting one, I just pull one on my own. And when I'm feeling lost or confused along the cycle of day-to-day life, I pick a card and it'll help guide me into a journaling prompt or dancing or crying or laughing or something that it allows me to drop in. And I think that's the coolest thing about that deck is it just immediately helps me drop in. And I think a lot of other women too.
Totally. Yeah. The deck is meant to create really accessible tools and rituals to help us feel our emotional well-being. It's an emotional health deck. It's a practical deck. I tried to write it in a way that had a language that could touch a lot of different people. And
the languaging is next level too.
Must say. Thank you.
Must say. I'm very impressed with it's just so romantic and beautiful, and it's poetry.
Sometimes I have to, even now, because a part of me wrote that and then there's other parts of me. So sometimes there's I have to read it, and I don't even connect to it like my own. I mean, I do connect to it like my own writing, but it doesn't, it feels like a part of me that is super dialed in, completely trusting of the world and of my path, and fully in the deeper lessons and the kind of more loving lessons of life. And then there's the other part of me that freaks out and forgets and has other habits that can get in the way of my joy. And so it's interesting. And so I'm sure human. As a yoga, a lot of us who are teachers or healers, I think have these different facets. I think humans have these different facets. So I do think a part of me wrote that. I think, I don't want to say it was channeled, but it was channeled through that part of me that channels when I teach. I heard different voices coming through of the type of woman I wanted to speak to while I was writing. And I feel like my younger self is in there because, as I said, the stuff I grew up with, and I wanted to speak in a language and speak to women and men. Some men use the deck because the teachings are universal. But I wanted to speak a language that would help women heal who maybe are younger and didn't have that voice in their life. And
what do you think allowed you to connect to that safer, more truthful voice when you were writing this?
Because
you're saying that when you're caught up in the regular life that is now, you almost have to bend yourself a little bit to get back to that place as you're reading what you wrote.
Right.
What do you think allowed you? What about that process? Because I think a lot of people who do work, that's what we want to do, is produce our best when we're working, but then all the distractions get in the way.
Yeah. I think I'm still, I think there's been progress as far as trying to be in that alignment as often as possible. I think that what helped me be in that place when I was writing was a decision to do so, having deadlines, having a team.
So you already, it wasn't like when you were making this thing, it was just you and a friend sitting around trying to do it. There was already a whole process in place.
Part of what happened was that I had like a bin of journals that I went through before. I was writing alone a lot of the time. And then Andi, she's the illustrator, we would be in touch a lot and have a lot of meetings. And
how'd you guys meet?
An ex of mine and her current husband years ago, so it's probably like 13, 14 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. They're very close friends from, I think, college.
Okay.
And so her and I were already acquaintances, and since then have become best friends, but we were just like really tight acquaintances at the time. And I actually found a journal entry that mentioned her in 2010 that I wanted to maybe use her as an illustrator to do a deck. And then I approached her in 2014, 4 years later, and I found that in my research. And
That's
my research was
amazing.
like, as a student, like lots of notes that I took of my teachers' teachings is in that deck and in the journal. Relationships that I had with people in my life who helped me grow with God, with spirit, the things that I grew up with and how I got through it. I was bulimic for 10 years and had like a strong recovery from like 13 onward. And so that is in there, the healing from that and the types of things that I had to go through to heal. And then the teachings of yoga, meditation. I was a total little tween witch back in the day, and like all those little teachings are sprinkled in there. And my mom has Native American blood, and so I learned a lot of like that side of spirituality through her, and Judaism through my father. So I just feel like all of it came together, and I think I just had a devotion to doing it. So to answer your question, like what helped me get into that space was the devotion to do so. And being a teacher for so long, I'm not someone who left a corporate job and shifted my life. This has been my life the whole time. I've always worked for myself, and from photography to holistic health counselor to yoga teacher, and now to this. So when I'm in that mode, something shifts in me to be present to being in that mode. But there were hard days. I mean, writing, I had some really unproductive days, but I still had to show up and sit just to get to that one day where I finally wrote the whole intro.
Did you go somewhere to get into the space?
I had a few places I went to. I wrote a lot at home at the time when I was still living in Brooklyn. And I had a few different cafes that I would write at. And actually the whole intro of the book, I had such an amazing writing day. I was just like, and you just like bang out so much.
Love those days.
It was amazing. I was it was in such a weird place. So there was this cafe. It's like a museum cafe that's, very witchy actually. And like they have, oh gosh, what's it called?
Where is it?
It's in Brooklyn.
Okay.
I don't even know. It was like it was like a taxidermy museum basically.
No
It was
way.
so bizarre, but it was a cafe and they served coffee, but it was really cool. Like artists created these taxidermies and there was all these weird old books, and
Love
it was
that.
kind of modern, like clean. It wasn't like some dusty taxidermy place, but it was also this like weird gothy witchy taxidermy place. And I was like, I'm just gonna go there because this is the place nearby, and I wanted to get a cup of coffee, and I just banged out the entire intro.
That's
I was
awesome.
like, wow, I need to go back there and write. Yeah, it was cool. I don't know what it was about that place.
So you had your own little ritual. Like you would go somewhere, it sounds like a bunch of different places. I think it's kind of interesting for people to hear the process, literally the process, because a lot of people right now do have jobs.
Yeah.
Maybe they like them, maybe they don't. They have side hustles or hobbies that they want to get involved in, but they don't know how to do it. And hearing other people's process can be such an eye-opening experience for so many of us, because we go, there's this internal dialogue of, I thought it had to be one way, because that's a story we've been told over and over and over how it's supposed to work out if you break out on your own or if you want to start a business or whatever. And so to hear from somebody that this essentially came from finding your own old writings, connecting to how you wanted to put them together, and then cobbling these things together, right?
Exactly,
Just finding an illustrator to do the work, who now ended up being your partner. This idea that came from, you guys told us that for the first retreat that you guys led together, you gave these moon decks to the people at...
that came on the retreat.
It was also for the retreat people. Okay, I thought it was for the people at Free...
it was the Free People retreat. The first, we had 28 people, whatever
you
it
made
was,
them all decks.
participants who actually paid to be on the retreat, and that was one of their gifts.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I think that, for me, that I did cobble it all together and look through old journals, and I was still teaching on the side and still doing a lot of gigs on the side. So yeah, we'll see what happens when the next one's ready to be expressed.
How many editions? What's the revision number now?
Oh, this is probably our 5th print run that we've done.
And every time you adjust things?
Not a whole lot. I try not to do too much, but we do small adjustments, but the last couple we didn't. And we actually launched 3.5 years ago, and we launched as a crowdfunding campaign. So we raised $50,000 from our pre-orders. And those people, I was very adamant about basically being ready to print, because I didn't want it to be one of those campaigns where you take a year, 2 years, if ever, to receive the gift. And I really was like, let's get this done and be ready to launch. And all we need is the money to print and maybe some editing. We did that. I didn't want to make it public until those supporters got their deck. And then we went into business after that. So everyone was everything was ready to go.
That's cool. When you were teaching, because you're going into studios and doing, living in that world, right? Did you ever see yourself as a business owner in this way, having a product and doing all of that?
I don't know if I saw it or didn't see it. I feel like it's kind of neutral. I mean, I've always worked for myself, and I've always had a bit of a business sense. I think that was one of the big gifts my dad gave me. He's a pretty hardcore business consultant. And so I think all of us sibs in the family kind of have that drive in us. So that wasn't foreign to me.
That's cool.
I'm actually learning to soften the edges a little bit, because I think I'm really happy I have that. And I also want to let more flow and trust in, and not kind of drive from that overly, I don't know. I'm learning to balance all of that, actually.
Left brain.
Yeah. That's partly why I'm going to Bali.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just
That's
to
awesome.
soften the, still work, but be informed by a totally different energy and be steeped in a place where I've never been. So, but I know from what I hear that it's very steeped in ritual and feminine energy and prayer. And I know people are traveling from all over the world working and being entrepreneurs there too. So I'm looking forward to that combination.
Yeah. One of our good friends, Steve, has just, he spent some time in Bali too, but he went all over Southeast Asia, all over South America. Then, he's really just traveling, doing how long are you going to Bali?
6 weeks.
Yeah. That's a good chunk of time.
I know. I'm a little, that left brain part of me is a little nervous. I'm like, oh no, am I being responsible?
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So
I know
it's
I
funny.
am.
It's funny because you are in many ways partly free-spirited yoga instructor. You own a moon deck that it's interesting that you haven't been to Bali and that you've been afraid. There's been part, and I want to talk about that and kind of explore that, because it just seems like such a natural, oh yeah, yoga teacher goes to Bali, leaves for 6 weeks, no big deal. But you've been kind of you've had inklings and you've pushed it away and you've not taken on opportunities, right? So speak more into that and what comes up for you. And
yeah, totally. I've traveled a lot. That's just one of the places I haven't gone. But even then, I've traveled all over the world. And even then, it was somehow work connected. I was leading a retreat, and then I would take a week for myself.
Exactly.
It's so driven by work. And maybe that's where I feel safe. I was just telling Andi that my father is kind of that side of me that's very business driven and stay safe. And there's a piece of that I love for kind of business 101. And it's a gift to receive that. And at the same time, it's a part of me that's doesn't actually feel like me. And as you guys know, a couple years ago, I moved from New York to LA because I was going through a divorce, which is pretty much done at this point, just some final paperworky kind of stuff. And I think that this ties into that for me, because I think in that relationship, and in particular since the divorce, a lot of my shit has gotten shaken up about how I carry fear and how I fear my future and what security means to me and the way that I worry about things. And it's just, I'm still sifting through a lot of that, and I'm not sure what it's going to feel like on the other side. Thankfully, I feel a lot of my power coming back and integration, some space opening up within me now I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I know it's going to create the next thing. And I'm really grateful for that, because whether it's karmic or choice or whatever, I am on a path where what life throws at me is turned into a teaching of some kind or a tool or whatever it is. So I love that, but it's also
scary.
Yeah. And it is a path, and it is there's no turning back now. So, but I think why Bali might bring things up for me is because it's a trip that I've been planning for literally wanting to go for 10 years. And then I had a ticket, and Andi, the illustrator of the deck, my business partner, just over a year ago, got diagnosed with breast cancer. And because of that, she's great now. She's on just about on the other side of all of that. But because of that, I had to cancel the ticket. It just wasn't the right time to kind of see what working virtually felt like. And I wanted to be there for my friend and be there for the business. So now I just got my ticket again because that voice got super loud again. So I think the fear comes from the unknown. I think the fear comes from was building a life that was more conventional and was all going in a direction, I thought. And then that all shifted very quickly between the divorce and my mom dying within the same few months and then moving across country. And so, things have gotten shaken up, and I'm rebuilding.
Things have really gotten shaken up. I mean, you were living in New York. You were on track to be married, or you already were married already. You were already married.
I was married. We were on track to start a family.
You're about to have a baby. That's right. Yeah. When I met you, you were right in that you were like, I'm either going to have a baby or we're going to separate. Like, you were right in that place where you weren't really sure. And it was interesting that you had the awareness and you were like, there's some hesitation I have towards having a baby, and he does too. You were right in that place.
Yeah, I think I carried a lot of doubts throughout that relationship. And to be honest, I'm still learning if that's my thing that I do in relationships. Have doubt or if I'm just not trusting myself. Either way, there's doubt there.
Sure.
If I'm not trusting the doubt I have with a partner because it's come up before, or if I'm not trusting my intuition, I'm not trusting myself. Either way, there's some doubt to work out there. And that, I think, comes back to like what I talked about with growing up and not feeling maybe supported in the ways that I felt empowered, and just some of the things that I went through, and that made me kind of find different outlets that wasn't coming from my family, which is such a source of that initial security that is like what our nervous system is initially built on. So I definitely, at this point in my life, it's up to me to do that work and clean it up. And that's kind of why I think the Moon Deck talks to so many people, because I tried to write something that felt really honest to my experience and really approachable and digestible, and something that was a voice that wasn't too far out there, but something that people can do even if they only have 3 minutes a day to make a change. Because that's what it is. You show up for yourself, even if it's 3 minutes a day, and the cumulative impact of that is what creates that net of well-being for us. And for me, that's the way it goes. And maybe that's because things were so chaotic that I had to have some type of pillars in my life to help me feel centered.
People underestimate the power of rituals, even if those are standard westernized rituals, even if they have nothing to do with tarot or that kind of world. I was just talking to a client today, and he was really struggling. He's looking for a job, and he's a developer, so it's like there's work everywhere. Like the biggest companies on the face of the earth are looking for programmers and developers all the time. So he's getting a lot of interviews, and he was talking about why he thinks he's not getting them. And he was like, always in life, like you were just talking about the actual problems, right? The breakup of the marriage, and your friend and partner having cancer, right? And those are real surface level struggles. And so he was focusing on one of those and kind of and putting all the weight on it. And what I wanted to point out to him is, yes, those real world struggles are anxiety provoking and stressful, and they can be shocking, and they can throw you off. When the rest of your life is moderated, I'll say, by having rituals, whether that's, Sophie tries to have like 15 minutes of some quiet time and like 5 minutes of journaling and a little breathing meditation in the morning. I do my 5-minute journal, and I drink some water, and I get on that bike. Like something to just center the beginning of your day, the middle of your day, the end of your day. If you can have those things in place, then when the realities of life are shaking you, you at least have something to hold on to.
Exactly. It's like the eye of the storm. It becomes the one constant when everything else is changing. It becomes the one thing you can like trust when everything else is shifting, for sure. It's been a lifesaver for me in so many ways.
Without that, sometimes it literally feels like the storm is just picking you up and throwing you wherever it wants to.
Totally.
I used to wake up in the morning. I don't know how many people do this. I don't know if you used to do this, but I used to wake up in the morning and just like pick up my phone and just go right to email. That was the first thing I would do for years. Write to email. And it seemed like the most natural thing to do. The only problem is then the entire beginning and the rest of my day are dictated by what people wanted from me while I was sleeping. So it's like you pick up the phone, you look at it. Oh, good emails, I'm having a great start to my morning. Bad emails, I'm having a shitty start. I had no control over any of that. I just let other people take it. So by having the moon deck, by having a journal to write in every morning, by having something that you control and you get to ground yourself in, you get to rescue back that power over what your life is going to look like.
100%. And it can be making your bed. It can be so mundane. It's just like, this is the thing I do. It can be walking your dog, or I always say it can be anything from the mundane to the mystical and everything in between. There's no right way to do it. Just as long as you, and it's like, and it's strengthening that. I talked about devotion earlier. It's like strengthening that ability to be devoted to your well-being, and how often we tell ourselves we're going to do something good for ourselves and we just, don't. And that, I think, does add up to an imbalance or a sicker mind, or not as emotionally balanced, or not good boundaries, or whatever we want to call it. And in a world where there is, I think, a epidemic of soul sickness on the planet right now, these are the ways that we can take care of our spirit and our body. And I don't think that's woo-woo. I think that's like a privilege to be able to do that, and a luxury, unfortunately, at this point, to do that.
It's not woo. I mean, on the most basic level, just take it as stress, right? Forget energy, forget all that stuff, which I am learning to believe in more and more and more, but forget all that stuff and just look, if you're Western, look at just stress. Over and over and over, stress is the number one common thread across every chronic illness we know of. Everyone. Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, from high blood pressure to frequent heart attacks, strokes, cancers. I mean, people think smoking causes cancer. Smoking doesn't cause cancer more than stress does. Literally, it's kind of insane. I don't know how many people have heard me say this before, but you know how everybody always talks about smoking leads to lung cancer? If you smoke cigarettes, you have a 5-time more likely chance of developing lung cancer. So definitely 5 times as much, right? Bigger. The thing is, on average in the population, it's like 0.1% or something of the population will get that. So now you'll have a 0.5%. If you have if you smoke cigarettes and you have a family history of cancers, you now have, I think, a 15-time chance. You add stress to that, it's like a 25-time increase. So without stress, cigarettes alone don't cause it. Add the family history, add the stress, and then you get this epidemic of smoking. So what you're talking about is, for some people, the spiritual connection is their way to de-stress, to let better vibes in, to lower their energy in terms of their stressors. All doesn't matter how you want to talk about it.
And I think we're like ritualistic creatures, or habitual ritual, whatever, the word ritual is thrown around a lot. Like if you talk to people who are really truly like ritualistic ceremonial beings, they might have a really different take on that, but I love the word. And it's practices, rituals, routines, whatever you want to call it. And I say this sometimes, having been kind of dealing with bulimia and all the eating disorders, and like where that led me for those 10 years, like that was just an array of really sick rituals, like repetitive behaviors. When I was in it, it went away for a few months. I would convince myself I'm fine and I can handle it, and then it would come back with a vengeance. And like any addiction, it was just that's what it looked like for me. Yeah. But I was like thinking, I was having a conversation with someone, and it was just, we were talking about how all of that, whatever side of the spectrum, is just a series of rituals. Whether they're healthy or not is a different story. And these like habits that perpetuate either well-being, either wellness or sickness.
Yep. No,
and
absolutely.
And for me, it was kind of reaching a point where I preferred wellness over sickness on that level. And I think that's what helped me heal, along with some other things. And now I'm just like, and now there's new layers to explore that are more subtle and more inward, and those inward practices can happen all the time. And
now you get to go to Bali.
And now I get to go to Bali. I know. I'm so grateful and excited for that. I feel like coming to LA from New York has been a really, really, really great thing for me. And I was born here, originally grew up here in LA. And it's been a wonderful transition, exactly what I needed. And in some ways it just feels like New York kind of superimposed. Like I see my certain patterns and ways that I operate that I'd like to work on in a different environment kind of come up. And I'm not, I just, as I'm saying that, I'm like, well, you take your shit with you wherever you go. So obviously it'll come with me to Bali, but I do feel like there's something about how our energy and how our spirit, and for me, this is a calling I've had for a long time. So just that alone, to listen to a calling, which is going to directly funnel into my work, because my work is ritual based and Bali's ritual based, is like going to inform my nervous system, my spirit, my heart, and my work. And I just know I have to go there, whatever it is. You know?
The noise is going to go down.
Totally, right?
Even in LA, right? Because New York, can I be honest for a
18
second?
years, man.
I can't see you in New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Because you see me.
If you walk with me down the street, you'll see how fast I walk.
Got it.
I'm just like, ding, ding,
It's
ding.
because I only see you here. That's so interesting.
I do have a New York side to me. That's funny though, but thank you. I mean, there I probably had a little more of a chiller flavor than some people, but
okay.
I
like my family lived in New York for 15 years, and my mom was like the all black, right? So always just full black, like
I know that drill.
With the I'm wearing black pants right now too, so it's funny. I'm in all black today, but and kind of just like you're saying, like speeding, like a mouse walking down the side of the road, and there's a really, because I really love New York in many, many ways. And then there's that frenetic energy to it that just never ends.
It never ends there. And that's why I think I wanted to get out. And when the divorce happened and I moved out, I was walking around with a broker looking for a new place. And like something in me was just like, I'm going to sign another lease. I'm here for another year. Like how many more times? Because I had done that a few times where I was like, New York's kind of a lot. And then I would stay. And I love New York. I love so much about New York. I'm really happy New York's a part of my life. I can go back there anytime. I'm super dialed in. And after that separation, I just was like, it just did not feel right to sign another lease. So I subletted, and then my mom passed away unexpectedly. And then I came to LA because this is where I grew up and I have a lot of family here, for like a 4-month trial. And I decided to stay. And
is that when I met you during that 4-month trial? I remember you came over and you and Sophie were talking about, I think you guys had just...
I was probably still in the swamps then.
Yeah.
I was pretty swampy in the early months of coming here because there's so much change and healing and
imagine.
Intense discovery and but it was a painful time, and I'm still ironing out some of the final pieces of that. However, I just knew when I got here, I was like, that was so intense. This is so intense. My life just spun out from underneath me, and I need to make it worth it. Like, I don't want to just truck along like everything's fine and just get the same lesson.
I think so many people do,
like
right?
a deep, it was like, it felt like such a big opportunity and experience. I was like, I need to learn from this as best as I can. I feel like I went pretty deep with that learning. Yeah. And now I'm seeing some new layers because now I've like, okay, I've been good. And like all the pieces are back in place. Now you're strong enough to do the next layer of healing. But that was like a big statement for myself where I was like, I want to make this pain and this like massive unexpected change like worth it. And like, what do I need to do to get the lesson to get it?
Well, I think it's great. A lot of people, again, they get resigned to, well, I'm already here. I know this way of doing things. Might as well just stick it out. I'm really unhappy and I'd love to go somewhere else, but I don't know that I want to put that energy into the newness of going somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, the leap to LA. I mean, I think because I was from here, there was some
safety.
Natural, like I could drop in, and Wanderlust is here, which is like kind of a sister studio to Kula in New York. And yeah, I felt really embraced coming here. Like it just was clear that it was the right thing. I think it was healthy for me.
I was almost even saying that because Bali is the next step of relaxation. Right. It's like New York, super frenetic. I mean, you can't move from New York to we went to Raleigh. We were just in Raleigh. Like you can't move from New York to Raleigh, North Carolina. You will lose your mind. You will go postal on people. You'll be like, nothing happens here. I need some, like, let's go, right?
Yeah.
So you move to LA. LA is like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
It's a really chill, beachy town, but it's a city. So there's the energy of a city. And now you're going to Bali.
Although Bali is apparently, I've gone to India a few times, and I think like the traffic there, it's like frenetic, busy. Huh. Yeah, it's not. And like I've heard like some people like prepare yourself. There's a lot of trash. I just think it's still, there's going to be like really natural settings. I have a friend there who's lived there for 10 years. So he's helping to set things up for me. So I think I'll get away and like go into the nature dives. But if you're in Ubud or some like the main town, I don't know if from what I hear, it's not like highly like get away from people, nature.
Well, I can't wait to hear back what it's going to be like.
Yeah, we've never been.
I'll be sharing on my stories, I'm sure.
Yeah, we can't wait to
share
follow
with the
along.
world.
Yeah, I think you've taken a lot of leaps that even if you consider yourself to have a little bit of fear, you take a lot of risks. I mean, you left a marriage. You are now on the other side of a divorce, almost. You have had some really hard, like your mom passed away in that time period that you were going through your separation. Or was it right before?
It was, I moved out January 2017 and then to sublet in a friend's place as I figured out my next steps. And then she passed away that March.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah. And she wasn't well. She dealt with a lot and had been an addict a lot of her life. So she had a lot of stuff going through her system. And she just this was not her planet, I always say. I just feel like she just didn't have a way to land here. So she's in a much better place now. Oh. And
Noah's feeling it. Hi, Mama.
She knew we were talking about her.
As long as you're talking about Noah, she's very happy.
Yeah. She wants all the attention. Like a true Gemini. She's like, where's the party? When are we all going to socialize?
So what's the Moon Deck is ongoing, going to be working remotely, etc.
For 6 weeks. Yeah, I'll be back.
Yeah. But my guess is when you go, there's also something new. To me, as part of a trip like this, I would imagine there's something you're looking for beyond just the continuation of the work that you could go do like in Malibu Cafe or something.
Right.
What are you hoping for?
Deeper healing, for sure. I think I need to kind of remove myself from life as I know it. And there's still, as I said, some work that I'm doing around that separation and around all of that and around what's been revealed to me in these last 2 years, just like stuff that's always been with me that all of these changes have really brought to the surface. And I'm a pretty deep digger, so for better or for worse. So I go deep into like understanding myself and into the discovery and wanting to do better. And on one hand, that's a beautiful thing. On the other hand, it's like, it's good to give it a break sometimes. So I think going to Bali will help that as well, to do the deeper healing, but in a less linear way. I think LA, New York is this like very linear style of living. And I just need to get out of the linear and like walk the great circle for a minute and like do the writing and have my meetings and run the business and just show myself like what other lives are possible. I don't know. I don't really want to be someone who's constantly traveling because I love like my home and having a landing pad. However, I do think I need to reset my perspective on what's possible and listen to a deep call and live my life in a different environment for a couple months that I know will inspire a different type of writing, will inspire new projects, will give me the space to like go follow through some projects. We have a long list in our business of things that we need to get to and haven't quite happened yet. So I just want to get out of the grind a little bit and still show up for my work and feel, I guess my dream would be to go there and still work in a way that feels more nourishing to me than how I'm currently operating.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And then like running a business.
Some of that back.
And hopefully bring some of that back. And maybe really commit to like a once or two time a year, trip where I go into the deep dive. Because I think as teachers and artists and healers or whatever it is, that it's so important we remove ourselves and be a student and go into a different environment and learn in a different way. And I personally have gotten kind of, I don't want to say caught up in the grind because I'm building a business. We're in the first few years of the business and it's like, no joke, it's a lot of work and I want to show up for that. But I want to bring a new...
But that is a grind.
It is a
grind.
Totally.
And
it is. That's just like the truth.
And it's not a negative thing. Like
Right.
I'm in the grind of being a mom to a new baby. That's the truth. I'm in it. I'm in a grind. I'm in a routine. It's an easy routine, It's like, I know what I'm going to get. It's not easy work, but I know what it is. There's no mystery involved. Like, I'm not doing any betterment other than like just showing up and being a great mom, which is great, but I'm not like discovering anything new with the routine. It's very hard to do that. So I think going out of your comfort zone, I just had a flashback to that first time that in Mexico, you were who like held me during the hardest time. Like it was right after the cheating on my end when I just had that New Year's incident, and I opened up to you on the beach the first moment we had.
For those who don't know what Sophie's talking about, go listen to the Our Story
Going Deep episode.
Going Deep episode.
Yeah. And I mean, I felt so safe with you, and I think we both have that side to ourselves, both as yoga teachers, but also just been through a lot, had a lot of life experience, and we choose to go deep and understand who we really are and how we can grow and learn and why things happen. What is the messaging here? How can I learn? How can I grow?
That you were in that place and you were at the gate of starting to consider whether your relationship was going to survive or not.
Yeah. I mean, I, in the end, wanted our relationship to survive, actually. I was having doubts throughout. And again, I'm like exploring, is that my bullshit, or is that just me not being in the right relationships and not knowing how to detect that? And then I sort of drop in, and then I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a longer conversation probably, but I did in the end. We'll have
a part two.
Yeah, we'll have a part two. But I did in the end really want to work on things, and I was just like, this is what I crave now in partnership, and it's what I see with you guys. We got to a point where it shifted for him, and I was like, so much truth is on the table. Like, this is the stuff we can grow an empire with, and we just were on different pages at that point. But I delayed. I kind of was like unsure. And I think my doubts were there for a reason. I think that if I can just look at my life and give it a little more trust, and you know, that there's a force in my life that is always protecting me. Always. Yeah. I've always been that way since I was a child. It continues to be that way. And I'm just relearning how to trust it again. I'm just relearning how to trust it again because it got shaken up these last couple years.
Sure.
So I think that's a big part of Bali too, like this deeper call, because for me, when I trust that deeper wisdom and that like protective force that's in my life, that's always been there since I was a child, that just the sky is the limit. Like everything moves and accelerates. And so I have that in my life, even with everything going on, and even with me not always feeling, I don't want to say I don't feel aligned. I feel fully aligned. I'm just, things are being rebuilt. Things were shedded. You know, we're always falling apart and building ourselves back up, apart and building ourselves back up constantly. It's the dance. So I've been going through that phase. I'm in this other phase of rebuilding. I feel, like I said, this space opening up that I'm really excited. And I feel like going to somewhere like Bali, in my case, it's just going to tie it all together and enrich my experiences that I've gone through, so it can be channeled into teachings. It can be channeled into maybe the next tool or product. And most importantly, it can just be channeled in a way where I feel completely at home in my body again and not so foreign in it, because these last couple years I have felt really awkward in my skin.
Wow.
But that's been shifting the last like 6 months, I would say.
That's cool.
But it's been a time. But I think, as Sophie was saying, all these things that we go through in real life stuff helps us be in our empathy in a deeper way that serves the work we all do in the world.
Absolutely. And I think this is a good segue to, we ask each of our guests 5 questions, and there's the same 5 questions. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to start talking about some of the things that built you up to this place. So the first question we always ask everybody is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received I'd say the best advice I've ever received, there's a lot of it, but something that feels current for me was being shown however we're judging others is a reflection of how we're judging ourselves, as I kind of work on my inner critic, and she's strong at times, which gives me my drive and my ambition. And there's a lot of beauty in that. However, I'm again learning, I've seen where I've harshly or unnecessarily have judged people who I care about, and that is just a pure reflection of like that voice for myself. So that's been really good advice, to start to see that and own that, and
so you can start understanding yourself better too.
Yeah, and be accountable for it, and start understanding myself, and then start to soften that voice, and I get to practice in the world with people I love, and then I can practice it, you know, with myself. So that's been awesome. Some good advice lately. Yeah,
that's great. What has been your proudest moment?
My proudest moment, I would say, is, there's a few of those as well. One of them was a massive event I did. I used to do these events called Yoga Soundscape, And I did a couple where we had a 7-piece orchestra.
Wow.
Yeah, with like floor to ceiling visuals, and it requires rehearsals. There's kind of a script and a theme, and then we all riff once we're there. We have our little pillar points that we land on, and that was a huge accomplishment and a dream I had carried within me for a long time. So seeing that happen, that was in 2012, and then I did one in Iceland a few years later with the 7-piece orchestra as well. So those were very proud moments, and another really proud moment is the moon deck, of course, and seeing that, the testimonials we get are like incredible, over the top incredible. And those are moments that I'm proud of and learning to take in. And then another one that's maybe less expected, you said proud moment, right? This one's a little maybe left field in the sense of proud, but it was when my mom passed away. We got her cremated because that's what she had asked for. And we're kind of I'll bring some of her ashes to Bali, where my brother and I are bringing her ashes all over. And I was proud because we had a ceremony for her. She went in Colorado, lived in Colorado. So we had to go there to kind of tie up her affairs and have her ceremony. And my brother's like, well, we're going to get her ashes on Thursday. And I'm like, we're going to get her, I'm not going to just go get my mom's ashes. Like, I need to be there. It's weird. So I felt very proud because I really pushed to see her before she went in we didn't get to see her. I had this vision that we're going to see the flames and this very, but that's not legal. So we didn't see that, but they did set her up, which they don't get that request very often.
Oh, wow.
And I got to see her. I hadn't seen her in over a year. And I was like, I need to bring a bag of sage and flowers and do this right. And so the 2 men that were there were actually so moved. I had my moon deck, had flowers because she's in that deck very much. And I had a massive bag of dried sage and rose petals. And my mom being part native too, I just felt like I had to honor her in that way. And my brother went and saw her first, make sure the coast is clear. He told me to come over, and it was a wild experience, an image I will never forget. She was just in a white sheet, just her face. I mean, it looked like she was about to reach up and grab us. And we just sprinkled the sage all over her, and I spread out the cards on her, and we put the flowers on her. And that just felt like a really proud moment to...
a very grown-up thing,
It was such a deep instinct. I was like, this is how we're doing it. And to follow those instincts, and that's a big example, but it just felt proud to be like, this was an instinct I'm following through, and then to honor my mom in that way. And I just felt her spirit in the room, and I was just felt so proud of her and proud of making the choice to honor her in that way.
Wow, that's
So cool.
beautiful.
Wow. Interesting transition, but what was one of your most difficult moments ever?
She's like, all those. Read above.
And all of that. My most difficult moment, there's just so many answers for all this stuff. I mean, I think the divorce is what's most current for me. It's something that I'm learning to still understand and integrate. And now I'm not in the raw difficulty of it. But back then when I was still living there, I mean, it was a messy, messy time and very traumatic time. So that was probably my most difficult time. And also just a lot of stuff that I grew up with. There was a lot there. So I don't think it was difficult at the time, because when you're a kid, it's just what you know.
Yeah.
So I think the aftermath of that and cleaning up some of that and learning what trauma does to us and healing from different things. And then also witnessing some of the patterns and behaviors that created just what I learned growing up and how I learned to relate to partnership and relate to love and relate to myself, and kind of seeing that now in a bigger way has been difficult. It's exciting. It's relieving, because I'm like, okay, I know the road now, but it's been difficult to have to really look at it and the only way out is through, right? So it's just I just have to do this work. If I don't have a choice. I just wasn't handed those cards to kind of so I'm hoping it all leads to a much, I know it will actually, to a place where it's lighter, but I'm grateful for it. I feel like it's just human. I think it's just we're human. We all have stuff. It's humans, a beautiful, joyful, magical path. And it's also a deep road being a human, no matter what someone's circumstances are. It's all relative.
Yeah.
You just said that to me the other day. I was like just in a bad place. And I was just like, life is so hard. Why does it have to be so hard? And he's like, yeah, but it's also really beautiful.
It is really beautiful.
And I was like, okay, I can't see that right now, but I believe you.
Yeah, and I'm learning that too. I mean, I feel like you, Sophie, you're like such an example of like living in that place. I'm learning to not identify with the trauma and not identify with the things I went through. And I'm actually in a place right now of really wanting to learn, because I am a voice to the public. I want to learn how to tell my story in a cohesive way, in a way, I want to say linear. And earlier I was like, I don't want to be linear, but in this way I do, so that it's digestible. Like, how do I tell all of this, which I'm only touching upon here, in a way that's actually helpful, but without identifying with it? Because I think I have up to a point in order to like validate myself for the validation I didn't get or whatever is there. So I think that's a place that I'm like deeply craving now, is to be a clear voice.
I think that just takes time.
It does take time.
It just takes time. You're so close to the divorce.
I hate doing this, but we got literally 3 minutes on this recorder.
Oh,
and I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
We run into this sometimes. What is your self-care ritual? How do you make sure that you show up as your best whenever you can? Those things that keep you in place.
Every morning, I have like an altar that I love. I love altars so much. I feel like it's my little campfire. And I sit there every morning. I do a 20-minute meditation. And then after my meditation, I do like a prayer of some kind. I just riff on whatever's going on for me. And that's like no matter what, I have that. Sometimes it shifts if I'm doing some kriyas or a 40-day commitment of some kind. But I always have that morning. And then sometimes I'll add to it oracle cards, journaling, but that sit is a big one for me.
Awesome.
Having a big glass of water every morning. I always do that. Those are like my main things.
Really
and then I'll
important.
have little other commitments throughout the year that I'll go into.
And then your last question, what ignites you?
What ignites me? Good people like y'all. Sharing this, all of what I've shared, sharing my story, sharing what it's getting turned into, being able to be a light for people who don't have examples in their life. Even in this world of wellness, I think we were talking earlier, like it's beautiful. I'm glad this stuff is trending, and like we all need to get a little more real.
Yeah.
And so it really lights me up to be that voice for people when they come to me for an oracle reading or a session, that they can really bring anything to the table. And I'm okay, like sifting through it with them. It's, there's no one way for anyone. Be accepting. Yeah, like
maybe sometimes the first person who's been accepting to them.
Totally. Yeah. And just all the possibility of this planet. We can really like shape our reality. And these practices are all meant to give us the power of choice, to remind us that we have a choice, that our story matters, that our voice matters, and that it really is just a little pivot here and there. These rituals help to adjust ourselves to who we are unapologetically, our unique chemistry, our unique formula, and then attracting the people that reflect our greatness back to us.
I love that.
Hell yeah.
Well, you reflect our greatness back to us.
You ignite us.
Same, and vice versa, I hope.
For
this
sure.
has been great, and I guarantee people are going to love this. And as I tell you all listening, do me a favor, screenshot, tag us, and let us know what it was that landed the most for you. Thank you so much for showing up.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you guys. Love you.
Wow, we love you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.